Hello everyone and welcome to the fourth installment in this annual Wolves transfer video. Today we're going to be looking at potential targets that I think Wolves should take a look at in order to rebuild the squad ahead of the new season. So let's take a look at what players we want. Okay, so starting off with goalkeepers. So a little bit of a strange one this. A lot of people think that Jose Sa needs to be replaced. I don't think it's necessarily a priority for Wolves at the moment, but if Jose Sa was to go, then there's a couple of options that I think that we could get in for decent prices. So the first one of those is the German goalkeeper Alexander Nübel. He had a solid season out at Stuttgart last year, I believe, on loan from Bayern Munich. He's been there for a little bit of time. He's had several loans in that time. Very much a traditional sweeper keeper player. He's confident with the ball at his feet. He has a very high pass completion percentage to back that up. Really good goalkeeper that is able to long ball and short pass his way out of trouble or start attacks. And so I think, when Wolves have been linked with goalkeepers, a lot of them tend to be good with their feet. He also is a decent shot stopper. Again, his save percentage and post-shot XG isn't anything mind-blowing, but it's still very, very solid. He's got a market value of 12 million. He is sort of, I think internally maybe at Bayern Munich, seen as a kind of eventual replacement for Manuel Neuer, so it might be quite tough to get Nübel off their hands. They obviously rate him highly. He cuts an imposing figure. He's a decent shot stopper, good with his feet, as I've said previously. And he also has a really, really good clean sheet record. So I think in terms of a fail-safe goalkeeper, I think he'd be able to adapt to the physicality and the speed of the Premier League, as German football is a little bit more high intensity. But look, I think if you're looking for a goalkeeper that's good with his feet, he is made in that mould. Respectable price tag, is a good age for a goalkeeper as well. No-brainer in my opinion. Okay, so the second and probably my personal preference is the Spanish goalkeeper Alvaro Valles. Really, really, really good season for Las Palmas. I think this is a player that Wolves have actually been linked with, because when I was doing my research, I recognised his name and his face, and I was like, I'm sure we've been linked with him. Had a look back, we have indeed been linked with him. I know Nottingham Forest, I think in January, had a €17 million bid rejected, so I think this is going to be quite an expensive purchase. He's their number one, and he's been a big part of the reason why they've had a good season back in La Liga. Really, really good with his feet, similar to Nübel. I think what impresses me most is his distribution out wide. He is capable of being able to, come out of his penalty area confidently, and then he's able to ping passes into the wide areas really well, which if we stick with a 3-4-3, I think that's going to work really well with the fullback options that we have. They are very advanced. So I think that straight away gets us yards. And again, look, he's a very aggressive goalkeeper, so he defends from the front. He comes off his line very quickly. He uses his legs a lot. He has a very big frame. Now, when you watch him, come off his goal line to close down attackers, you realise just how big his frame is, which is really important. And look, he's a confident goalkeeper, really good shot stopper. His save percentage, his post-shot XG save percentage is really, really high. He's had a really, really good season. He, more often than not, saves what is expected of him, and also is able to provide, some real, kind of highlight camera reel saves. Similarly to Jose Sa, actually, I think Jose Sa is a very good shot stopper. I think his reflexes are very good. I think he's good at collecting the ball from crosses. Valles has that in abundance. Really good reflexes, can get down really fast, and because of his bigger frame, he's able to, kind of get those shots that are going into the top corners as well. But I think what he has that Sa lacks is obviously the confidence in distribution. And I think that, in terms of the best option for Wolves as a goalkeeper right now, he's definitely it. He's got plenty of clubs keeping an eye on him. Again, a good age for a goalkeeper, decent market value. I think you're probably looking at maybe 20 to 25 million to bring him in. If Jose Sa gets sold for decent money, then, we could potentially see him come in. I'd like to see him in, mainly because it's good to have a goalkeeper that can do a bit of everything, and he is very much the all-round modern-day sweeper keeper. Okay, so in terms of centre-backs, I've chosen 3 players, the first of which is Jacob Greaves, Hull City's Jacob Greaves, the captain from last season. Now, not exactly a hidden gem, but unless you've been living under a rock, you'll know how good this guy is, consistently being one of the best centre-backs in the Championship for, I'd say, like 2 seasons now. Really, really good central defender. He's comfortable on the ball, excellent leader, strong in the air. He's reasonably quick as well. Much more of an all-round centre-back, very much a modern centre-back. Still only 23, and again, Hull City's captain says, tells you something about his personality. This Wolves dressing room is one that has a lot of leaders. I think if you add an extra one in there, I think that's going to do us some good. I know that, there has been some question marks over Max Kilman's ability to lead from the front on the pitch, especially vocally. So I think that you get someone in like Jacob Greaves, maybe just to play in the centre of the back 3. Then you have a centre-back who's really comfortable in bringing the ball out and can maybe help Wolves' evolution into this more progressive team that we obviously want to be under Gary O'Neill. I think he helps with maybe a switch to a back 4. But overall, you get an all-round centre-back who's good at everything you want a centre-back to be good at. And I think whilst he's going to be really expensive, I think if we sell Kilman for, 35 to 45 million and then get Greaves in, I think, honestly, that's a really good bit of business. Okay, next up is maybe one you might not have heard of exactly. It's Kevin McAllister. Now, some of you might actually recognise that second name and think, we know another McAllister that does currently play in the Premier League. Is there any relation there? Yeah, you're right. He is Alexis McAllister's brother, of course, the midfielder who has played so well for Liverpool in the past year. Really, really solid looking player. Now, what I actually like about Kevin McAllister, not Alexis, is that he can play across the whole back 4, which I think when you're looking at a team like Wolves who usually stick to a small squad, I think versatility is obviously one of those things that you have to look for in players, and it's kind of a theme of signings that we've made over the past few windows, that it can at least play, wing back or winger, centre back or left back. You see that obviously with Totti Gomez. Now, Kevin McAllister can play left back, right back, centre back. So you're fine in terms of being able to switch him across the back 4. You can kind of slot in anywhere. He does like to get forward on a decent amount from what I've seen of him, more so in his time in South America. There's a lot of clips of him getting forward a decent amount. So if you were to play him at fullback, I think he's one of those that could do a job in terms of manning both the defensive and offensive side. Didn't play all of the games for Union last year. I think he had played about 70%, so an okay amount of minutes. Obviously, you'd like him to be starting in, week out. But if we're looking in terms of just pure depth player, I think he's pretty good. Statistically, he ranks highly for tackles, blocks, and interceptions, which is always good. In terms of having a defender that can be active in terms of winning the ball back. I think sometimes what our defenders lack is a little bit of aggressiveness. And usually when I do these videos, I look for defenders with high defensive numbers. Usually for me, it suggests that they're a defender that gets involved a lot in the defensive side of work and they're a little bit more aggressive, which I think is something that Wolves have lacked recently. He's comfortable on the ball, obviously. You have to be if you're going to play across the back four. It's very different role-wise, obviously. Right back, left back, centre back. He needs to be comfortable on the ball. He is that. He's got a decent bit of pace to him. He looks to be a decent physical figure. So I think, honestly, in terms of if you're looking for a backup option that can play anywhere across the back four and offers you a little bit of something different, I think he's a really decent player to look at. He's cheap. He's still relatively young as well. Definitely got a few years in him. And I think if you give him time to kind of settle in, I think he could be a bit of a fan's favourite. He's a tough tackler, decent on the ball. Again, if you're talking backup options, no complaints from me. Okay, my third and final option for centre-back is Pascal Struijk. I'm actually not sure how you pronounce that, so I do apologise if I butchered it. But yeah, Pascal Struijk is pretty well known at his time from Leeds. Again, another player that if you look at his numbers, you'd probably think, my God, this guy cannot defend. Don't be fooled. This is more of a system thing. I think Daniel Farke, particularly this season, obviously Daniel Farke plays a very attacking system. So naturally his defenders are going to have lower percentiles than other defenders because they just defend less. Which is the awkward thing, I suppose, with centre-backs. When you're trying to look for centre-backs numbers-wise, it's kind of hard because they get skewed depending on what system they play. Pascal Struijk, obviously playing in a more attacking system, has to be good on the ball, and he is. In terms of compared to other centre-backs, his on-the-ball stats are really, really, really solid. He's able to pick a pass really well. In terms of line-breaking passes, excellent player. I think that what he would offer us is someone that maybe is an outlet more so than a Craig Dawson defender. Someone who's going to be able to relieve Wolves under pressure. He's going to be able to get the ball and just ping it out and get us started, which I have no complaints with. If we're going to get rid of Max Kilman, then maybe bringing in a cheaper, slightly more robust defender and then someone like Pascal Struijk, I think that is honestly a pretty good balance for Wolves at that point. I think he would probably, if we're going to stick with a back three, he would play, I think, either left or right. I don't think he really quite has the aerial prowess to be a central centre-back. I think there you need someone who's a little less quick, but, just your standard kind of Craig Dawson type defender. Again, he's going to be more expensive, but Leeds didn't get promoted, which is a big thing. I think that honestly significantly lowers his value, and he did have a pretty serious injury. So I think his value in terms of it being 15 million, I think you could probably maybe get him for around 20, but again, that could be really skewed. I think that it's someone that we could afford only if we sell Max Kilman. So if we sell Max Kilman, you get Struijk in, and then you have a player that is, I think, arguably better on the ball than Max Kilman, and offers you an outlet in terms of playing out from the back. I think, yeah, he's got Premier League experience, he's got Championship experience, he's been at Leeds for a little while. I think that in terms of a technically sound footballer, I think that he's a really decent option to have at centre back. Okay, fullbacks. So this was an interesting one. So left back and right back, I've kind of gone with one option for each one, because yes, we have signed Pedro Lima, but I did write all these down before we signed Pedro Lima. So forgive me, I'm still doing 2 left backs and 2 right backs. So let's start with the first one. So first we have a left back. He goes by the name of Gabriel Suazo, also known as Suazinho by Toulouse fans, the club that he currently plays for. Chilean international left back. He's had a couple of really solid seasons at Toulouse. And I think that if we were to lose someone like a Ryan Aït-Nouri, I think he's an ideal replacement. He profiles very similarly in terms of successful take-ons, attacking touches, etc., etc. If you're looking at it on a pure numbers basis, yeah, they are very, very similar players in the way that they play. He can also play on the wing, which does suggest, obviously, he is an attack-minded fullback. But I think if we're losing Aït-Nouri this summer and you get a decent fee, I think obviously you're kind of going to have to replace him with an attacking-minded fullback. I don't think that you can lose that sort of player that can gain so many yards and then replace him with someone more defensive, because obviously you lose a lot of offensive output at that point. So Suazo, great player, very skillful. He had a little bit of a rough time when he was in South America. He played for Colo Colo first, but he's really rebuilt his rep there. Then went to Toulouse, and he's had a couple of really decent seasons. He gets involved with a lot of attacking play. Again, similar to Aït-Nouri, loves to use just skills to get past players. You're talking like your roulettes, your step overs. Very similar player, one of those players that will get knocked but keeps going, takes on the next player. I think in terms of if you want to replace Aït-Nouri's dribbling, I think Suazo is an excellent option. And I actually think defensively he's pretty solid as well. Reads the game well, which is something that I think is an underrated part of Aït-Nouri's game. So if we can replace someone who does similarly well defensively for 10 million, I think you've got a really good deal there. He's obviously experienced. He's played in the Europa League and in European competition, obviously since moving to Toulouse. So you've got a player there that knows that we know he can play at a Europa League level, which is always useful. And obviously the international experience comes in handy as well. And the fact that his value isn't that high. I know Everton have looked at him. There's been a few murmurs online and in news articles that Everton are looking at him. I honestly think that this could be a really, really smart buy from Wolves. He's very popular with Toulouse fans because of his flair and his ability to read the game, but also contribute greatly going forward, particularly for a transition team like Wolves. I think is really important. You don't want to lose that pace on the ball and that pace in transition. So Gabriel Suazo, very, very solid first option. Okay, so a bit more of an ambitious purchase for the next one. It's Thiago Santos of Lille. Really high potential fullback here. He's got a lot of rave reviews from Lille fans, and he's been linked with quite a few clubs this summer. Definitely a player that's going to cost you, 20 to 30 million. But again, assuming that we sell Aït-Nouri, you've got, let's say we sell Aït-Nouri for 50 to 60 million. You've got enough money to play around there to get a good replacement. Whether Wolves would spend that much money on a player is yet to be seen. But I think in terms of getting a player with just as much of a high potential and resale value, Thiago Santos is perfect. He makes good forward runs, picks up the ball well in advanced spaces. I think he's one of those players that, similarly to Aït-Nouri or even Nelson Semedo, knows when to time a run well and knows when to receive the ball and when to drill past players. I think he's still quite raw. His end product obviously isn't fantastic, but he gives himself enough opportunities to create something for other players, if not himself. But I really like the look of this guy. He's going to be expensive. He's young. He's got a lot of potential. But like Aït-Nouri, I think once he grows into the Premier League, you've got a 60, 70 million pound asset there on your hands. Now, I'm going to contradict myself actually a little bit with this one, the next one. It's Sergio Reguilón. So Reguilón obviously has been a Premier League mainstay, I want to say. Did okay at Brentford last year. I actually think this would be a pretty solid signing if we can get him for a reasonable price. He's fallen a little bit out of favour at Spurs, which I think for me shows we could maybe get him on a relatively decent deal. There's a good player in there. His defensive numbers are really, really good, like really solid. I think that he's a player that is a little bit similar. He's more similar to Johnny than he is similar to Aït-Nouri. But I think that having a fullback that's a little bit more of an all-rounder and, is just solid, I think goes a long way. I think we do miss a fullback like Johnny. Yes, didn't really contribute that much going forward, but you knew that if he was on it, no winger in the league was getting past him. Now, whether Reguilón is to that level, I don't think so. But I think if you're looking for an experienced, maybe decently priced option who knows the league well, has good defensive numbers, and, is decent getting forward as well, I think Reguilón is honestly a decent option. If you can get him even on loan, I think to have someone like that in the squad, I think, is worth taking a look at. I think he's kind of rebuilt a little bit of form at Brentford. And so I think that it might be worth taking a look at some of these Premier League players that have fallen out of favour in sort of the top 6 clubs and maybe having a look to see whether we can, get players like that to fit into the squad. Okay, our last option for fullback is the Italian Raul Bellanova, a really, really solid performer for Torino. Again, this is an expensive one, but again, if Aït-Nouri is sold, then this is another player that we can maybe invest a good amount of the money into. And I think would offer a really interesting option for this Wolves team. Now, his defensive numbers are seriously lacking. When I first looked at him, I was a little bit intrigued because I was like, his defensive numbers are so low, but his attacking numbers are very, very good compared to all the fullbacks. So very much a wing back in this sense. Obviously, the system that he played in under Torino allowed him to get forward a little bit more. I like Bellanova. I think he's solid. I think he can get forward to good effect. His numbers are really well, or really good, I should say. Something that Wolves have lacked fullback-wise has been a fullback that can get assists, score goals. His assists and goals return this season was really good. I think you're really paying for someone with more so the attacking side of it. I think you lose a little bit defensively, but with Wolves maybe continuing with the 5 at the back, I don't think you necessarily need to worry all that much about the defensive side of at least one of your wing backs. If you have the cover, with the 3 centre backs, which I think we do. I think we've got some respectable options there. So Bellanova will be able to offer us someone who is technically sound. He's very good on the ball. He's tall and he's quick. So I think physically he would be able to deal with the physicality in the Premier League. And he is very intelligent in the attacking final third, which again is something I think we've lacked a little bit. Yes, our fullbacks get forward well, but I think their end product is pretty inconsistent. Bellanova has shown over the course of last season that he is able to get forward and use the ball well. And I think his height massively helps, because if you're looking in terms of someone winning aerial duels a little bit more to kind of give you that outlet on wide areas, then I think it's useful to have a fullback that's able to win that first header, maybe, get a 1-2 with one of your slightly wider central midfielders, and then bam, he's away. I think he would work well with the midfield that we have. Second to last, we have wingers. I'm going to go through these a little bit quicker just for the sake of saving some time. But first of all, we have a young French midfielder / winger who goes by the name of Logan Deslauriers-Chaubert, bit of a mouthful. But he played in Ligue 2 or League 2 last season, the second division of French football. Had a really, really good campaign, really good goal and assist return, and ranked really highly in possession stats. Now, he did play slightly limited minutes, so his numbers might be a little bit skewed, but he ranks in the 90 plus percentiles for progressive carries, passes, etc., which suggests that, he's a really good midfielder to get on the ball and drive you forward, and obviously can play the wing positions as well. He can play 3 positions, as you can see on the little graphic here, which, again, versatility is a huge thing. And he's only 22 and a market value of 600,000. Now, very cheap. I think this is a player that you wouldn't necessarily expect to play all that much, but as a squad option, and a player with bags of potential, was very highly rated at Bordeaux, his parent club. I think this guy is worth taking a look at least get him in on the cheap and get the potential and, see if he can develop. I think I went quite left field with this one, honestly, just because of the potential this kid has, the versatility he has, and the goals and assists returns he got in, what is a decent league. League 2 is nothing to be sniffed at. Obviously, Boubacar Traoré played consistently there when he was at Metz. So, look, I think it shouldn't be sniffed at looking at the lower leagues. There's some really, really good talents there. If we can get him from Bordeaux and part with a few million, I think, honestly, that's a safe bet. You're not really losing much out there. And you get a kid with bags of potential, really good on the ball, excellent dribbler. He's got a good shot on him as well. I think he's a player that is, again, one of those young, exciting players that is confident, is going to gain us yards on the counter-attack, and kind of fits the mould of player that Wolves kind of go for when it comes to the younger players. Okay, the next 2 I have are more expensive options, but again, if we're talking if Pedro Neto leaves and if it's 50 to 60 million, I think we can get one of these 2 in to replace him. The front 3 is very fluid, so it doesn't really matter, but both of these can play on the left and the right. The first one is Jeremy Boga. Some of you might actually know Boga from his time at Chelsea. I think definitely if you look at his percentiles, he is a very one-dimensional player, if you look at it that way. He is a dribbling winger. He's not gonna rank highly in percentiles for like progressive passes and stuff, but his dribbling percentages and things like that are really high. And obviously, having watched him as well, I've seen him play before at other clubs, and having watched some of his, the usual highlight reels and taking a look at, analysis and whatnot. Really good player. He's very quick. He's very good on the ball, low centre of gravity, likes to cut infield quite a lot. Again, decent shot on him. He's not always the most consistent, but I think 6 goals and 6 assists in the previous campaign is a respectable return. And I think that, he's not, he's had a little bit of experience in England as well with Chelsea as a young player. So I think that Boga offers us something a little bit similar to what we missed in Adama, with a player that's just, just a pure dribbling player. Like, you give him the ball, he's quick, he can get past players, he can gain your yards. And again, though, he has the end product to back it up. I think he's a lot cheaper than what our third option is going to be. But obviously you lose a little bit of the all-round player. But I think in terms of an energetic, get-off-your-seat kind of player, I think Boga is a really good shout. Very skillful, pacey, can produce as well. Whilst his numbers aren't sky high, look, if you're a team like Wolves, you're not going to be able to afford someone who's getting double figures in goals and assists for the most part. So I think Boga is a really respectable option to look at. I know Roma have looked at him, I think, as well. So there's a few clubs looking around after the impressive campaign that he's had. I think just a really exciting player, and I think he would add a lot to the Wolves front three. Okay, and our final winger is Edon Zagrova from Lille. This guy, this is the expensive one. I'm talking, if we sell Pedro Neto for 50, 60 million, at least half of that you're paying just for this guy, but I think it's worth it. Now, this guy is just pure entertainment. Really, really exciting player to watch, and good output as well in a top division. I know that the French First Division isn't exactly looked on that great, but it's still a top division. And he's been excellent, really good goal and assist returns, and you couple that with a player that is very skillful and exciting to watch. I think out of the three, he is the most similar to Neto that I was able to find. And even his take on percentages are really high, shows that he's able to beat his man consistently. And look, just watching him just reminds me of Pedro Neto. He's the winger that's going to get his head down. He's going to beat 2 or 3 players. And he's a player that's deceptively strong as well. Wolves have had a few of those over the years. Obviously, we had Jota. I think Neto has moulded himself into that now, that winger that you just expect to get pushed off the ball, but is always able to use that kind of the core strength and be able to get past players. Zagrova is a really similar player stylistically. I think what convinces me that this is actually an upgrade in some regards is that he's more of a singular threat than Neto. And what I mean by that is that Neto can create stuff on his own, but I think that that's sometimes part of his inconsistency, especially when it comes to finishing. I think Zagrova is the sort of player that can create a goal for himself as well as others. That's a really, really rare skill in a winger. You only really get that in the top wingers. And I think that if Wolves can take advantage of the fact that his market value is, it's at its peak, but it's not quite at the 60, 70 million pound mark, you maybe get him in for 30, maybe. And I think you've got a really, really good winger who's still got many years ahead of him. Okay, and for the final section of this video, we have the centre forwards. So there's been a few centre forwards linked. Obviously, the issue Wolves had last year was kind of a lack of depth in that position, and that did hurt us at times, despite the fact that our front three worked very well as that fluid 3 that rotated. I think it's still good to have some decent options and, some proper centre forward options. Okay, so first of all is Che Adams. Now, we've been linked with him, and I was actually pretty happy to see this as a link. I thought that this was even before the links, I thought that this was a player we should look at, mainly because he is, going to be available on a free if he doesn't sign a new contract with Southampton. Had a really decent goal return in the Championship last year. and is a player that has Premier League experience. Yes, he's not always the most consistent finisher, but I think Gary O'Neill has got a tune out of players that we previously thought were inconsistent. You know, Hwang Hee-chan, Cunha had like 1 goal in 17 games. So that's not really too much of a concern for me, especially when he's coming off the back of a good season. I think that he offers something different for Wolves profile-wise. A bit more of a physical presence, a bit more of a poacher. And I think that is something Wolves sometimes have lacked. Because our front three is essentially made up of wide forwards or wingers, sometimes we lack someone with the instinct to just be in the box, which is why when, you know, Hwang is injured, we struggle so much with that goal threat, because he is someone that's just going to sit sometimes in the box and just find himself in the right positions. I think Che Adams offers us that kind of threat. I think on a free transfer, he's got a decent goal return. Again, you know, you get that Premier League experience. He's got a good bit of pace to him. I think, honestly, you really can't have any complaints on a free. Okay, and next up is another player that Wolves have been linked with. It's Mohamed Arouma, I think I'm right in saying. Algerian international. Did really well in the Belgian leagues this year. Only over 20 goals, and a really, really solid all-round player. I think when the main thing for Wolves is looking at a striker that has a good goal return, and in terms of Amoura, he is able to score different variety of goals, which is kind of what Wolves need in a centre forward. I think what we've struggled with is having players that can be a little bit one-dimensional. I think Amoura offers us a chance to get a player that can link the play well. I mean, if you look just purely at his percentiles, they're, I mean, absolutely amazing. He's not only a player that can provide a lot in terms of pure numbers, you know, goals, assists, touches in, you know, the opposing penalty area, but take-ons, carries as well. He's an excellent dribbler, really good technically, which I think, again, fits into Wolves' front three. I think, you know, whilst he is that centre-forward, he also gives us... We don't lose anything on the ball in terms of the ability to carry the ball and ability to progress the ball, which I think would be my main concern if you just take out one of those wide forwards and smack a centre-forward in the middle. Do you lose a little bit of that fluidity? Potentially. I think Amoura offsets that, but also adds the goal threat that means that Wolves can boost their numbers, but also keep the ball and be a good, solid team in transition. I think the fact that he has so many, he has a really good percentile for shot creating actions is good as well. He's able to create chances for himself and other people, and his passing stats are really decent as well. I think he has good vision for a centre forward. Honestly, he's a little bit of a Gyökeres light, if that makes any sense. I know last year's video, I said that we should sign Gyökeres when he was at Coventry. Obviously, he went to Sporting, and since then, you know, gone on to do really well in Portugal. But I think Amoura is kind of this year's answer to Gyökeres in that sense. So I think he'd be my pick of the three, but we've still got one more left to go. So let's just see, shall we? Okay, so our third option for centre forward and our final player of the video is Cristian Arango, the Colombian now international, currently plying his trade in the MLS. Now, don't laugh at me. I know the MLS is sort of looked down upon on these shores, but there's no arguing with his goal record. It is ridiculous. Like, if you look at his goal record, it is crazy. His goal return, especially this season, I mean, just look at that. You're talking one of the most informed strikers out there at the moment. Again, similarly to Amoura, they kind of profile similarly, to be honest. Really good at carrying the ball, at getting in the penalty area as well. Has high percentages for attacking touches in the opposing penalty area, and progressive carries and passes. Again, similarly to Amoura. So they both are strikers that would add something to this Wolves attack. Honestly, I think if you're looking at someone with such a consistent goal return, I think if you if you put him in the Premier League around, in a better team, I think, we've got players that can create chances for him. And he has international experience, obviously, with Colombia, being called up. He's as their number 9. I think this guy offers something different again to what Wolves have had, but offers goals, offers good technical ability, and a little bit of flair as well. Okay, so this is how the team could look if, we're assuming Jose Sarr, Max Kilman, Pedro Neto, Ait-Nouri, and maybe a couple of others are sold. If those were to be sold, this is how I think the team could look using some of my favourite options from today's video. But as always, if you have any suggestions, please leave them in the comments. I always really enjoy reading through and seeing what players you folks might have found. Obviously, I can't think of everyone, but there's definitely some players that could do the job. Some honourable mentions, maybe it's centre-back, I think. Thomas Bielan, I think his name is, from Feyenoord. I know we've been linked with him. Really, really highly rated. So, again, that's someone that, we could go for at centre-back instead of Pascal Struijk, for example. So, look, if you think of any alternative options to the players that I've put in the video today, leave them down below. I'm always happy to read through them. I hope you enjoyed the video today. Have a fantastic summer. Enjoy the Euros. And, yeah, I'll see you whenever I appear next.